Good morning. Welcome. We begin our time together in song with Wake Now My Senses, words by Thomas J.S. Michelson set to a traditional Irish melody. Please make sure your microphone is muted and sing along enthusiastically to welcome in this beautiful, beautiful summer day. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Gwinnett. My name is Jan Taddeo. My pronouns are she, her, and hers, and it is a great joy and a distinct privilege to serve our faith as the minister of this congregation. I am so grateful we can be together this morning in whatever way is possible. Thank you for being with us on this 4th of July holiday Sunday. If you have a chalice, please have it ready to light with us in a few minutes when we light our chalice. We arrive from many places and many life experiences as we gather to recall our true selves, reflect on the meaning of our lives, and explore questions of ultimacy together. We are people who are new to Unitarian Universalism and people who are lifelong Unitarian Universalists. We are people of many religious beliefs and spiritual practices. We affirm and promote the responsible search for truth and meaning. We are people of many genders, sexualities, ethnicities, origins, ages, shapes, sizes, and expressions of our true selves. We affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of all people. We are people of all ages and family structures, and we each bring gifts, talents, and passions that serve to affirm and promote communities with peace, liberty, and justice for all. We are people of covenant who engage with one another in ways that promote and affirm justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. We are people who care deeply for our planet and understand we are inextricably and profoundly connected with the web of all existence. We are people who welcome all who are seeking a community of faith that welcomes your whole self, all that you were, all that you are, all that you yearn to be. And you are just where you should be, in a room full of compassionate, thoughtful, Unitarian Universalists ready to meet you where you are. You are welcome here. You are home. And if this is your first time with us, we hope you will indeed find your spiritual home here with us. We are becoming a radically welcoming sanctuary in a green space. We foster spiritual growth as we joyfully nurture connections and community within our walls and beyond. If this is your first time here, I encourage you to join us several times to get the full flavor of this congregation and this faith tradition. Be curious, courageous, and compassionate with us. And now I invite you to take a deep breath with me as we bring our full selves into this precious time we've set aside to be together this week. And as sound vibrates through us and around us, may we be reminded how deeply and profoundly we are connected with one another, with all beings and all life on this planet, and with all the stars in the cosmos. We are one. Our opening words this morning come from Reverend Gordon McKeeman, addressing the mystery. How does one address a mystery? Cautiously. Let us go cautiously, then, to the end of our certainty, to the boundary of all we know, to the rim of uncertainty, to the perimeter of the unknown which surrounds us. Reverently. Let us go with a sense of awe, a feeling of approaching the powerful holy, whose lightning slashes the sky, whose persistence splits concrete with green sprouts, whose miracles are present in every place and moment. Hopefully, out of needfulness in our lives, the reconciliation of mind and heart, the conjunction of reason and passion, the intersection of the timeless with time. Quietly, for no words will explain the inarticulate or summon the presence that is all present even in our absence. But what shall I say? Anything. Any anger, any hope, any fear, any joy, any request, any word that comes from the depth of being addressed to being itself, or perhaps nothing. No complaint, no request, no entreaty, no thanksgiving, no praise, no blame, no pretense of knowing or of not knowing. Simply be in the intimate presence of mystery, unashamed, unadorned, unafraid. And at the end, say, Amen. And we light our chalice this morning with words from Betsy Dar, The One Circle of Life. It's Rita Romero lights our chalice. May the light of this chalice give light and warmth to our community when we are joyful and when we despair. And may we feel the warmth spread from our circle to wider and wider circles, until all know they belong to the one circle of life. And now it's time. Oh, did it go out? We got it. Time for our Wonder Box. Not lighting. Okay. Grab the lighter and I'll get it. Or the matches, either one. All right, well, let's open our Wonder Box while we work on fire for our... Okay. What's in here? Here, let me... There we go. Magic. Thank you. Okay, what's in here? Some of you probably know this as dream catcher. It's not the original name of that, and I'll say more about that a little bit later. There's also in here, let's see, this is a box, a paper box, a very sturdy paper box. It was made in Tibet. I don't know if you can see the image on it, but it's got the Om image all around it. Kind of hard to see from there probably. And inside is a brass bell and a wooden stick, and this is a singing bowl. It's called that because you can make it sing. And I'm going to say more about that later too. That is a singing bowl. Oh my, what else? Okay, we got a lot of books. Been in the storm so long. Oh yeah. And a lot of other books. These are Unitarian Universalist meditation manuals, many of which were written by people who have disabilities, people from different cultures, different ethnicities, different identities, Indigenous, African American, European American, all these. And this is a little sample of what's in my office. And I draw from these very often for meetings, for personal reflection, for worship. And two of these are Jewish voices in Unitarian Universalism and Buddhist voices in Unitarian Universalism. And I understand there's been some effort to try and do one of Muslim voices in Unitarian Universalism, but that's still underway. So these are some of our sources from which we seek some sense of connection with meaning and purpose and answering big questions about life. I have a story here called Beyond Every Door. I couldn't put a door in the Wonder Box. That just didn't work. But I want to ask those of you out there, who here knows the book, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? And can someone type into the chat and share how Lucy Pavenzi discovers Narnia? And then Gabby will read it out loud when somebody names it. How Lucy Pavenzi discovers Narnia. Any answers? They're typing?
I got Jen Garrison said a wardrobe.
Yeah. Yep. That's pretty much it. All right, so what happens is Lucy is looking for the perfect place to hide and opens up the door to a big wardrobe, and she goes through the door and into the back of the wardrobe, and suddenly she's in a whole other world, a magical world with witches and fauns and talking beavers. Wouldn't it be cool if there were a magical world beyond every door? When Lucy opened the door to Narnia, it didn't look like anything special. It was just a boring door to a wardrobe full of clothes and coats, but across its threshold was magic. Lucy already had a foot in Narnia before she quite realized what was happening. Many of the thresholds in our lives are like this. We don't know that we're crossing into another world until we're already halfway there. The door of a church takes us down a pathway of growth we might never have expected. The door of the doctor's office suddenly opens out into life with a hard diagnosis. A restaurant door opens onto a first date and echoes forward into the relationship of a lifetime. A beloved person's door closes behind you and sends you out in the world brokenhearted. The door to a library or a gym or a dance studio introduces you to a life's passion you might not have otherwise discovered. We cross these thresholds every day of our lives, for good and for ill, in joy, in sorrow, and in bitter, sweet truth. Truly, even our own front door is a great threshold, no matter how familiar the worlds within and without may be. Given our lives' reality of constant change, every day we open the same old door again, only to step out into a world that is new since the day before. In this way, there is a new world behind every door, awaiting our discovery if we only encounter it as such. That ends Betsy's reading. I add that these meditation manuals are a tiny sample of what I think of as doors that I open in my search for truth and meaning. Books of short essays, poems, and wisdom stories inspire me and spark ideas that cause me to pause and consider possibilities about the divine, my relationships with and among people, and my connection with the natural world. Our theme for the month of July is practicing our sources, and this is just a small sample of the world of wisdom sources from which we can explore, doors we can enter. And now let us sing together, "May nothing evil cross this door."
From a statement included in two Unitarian Universalist Association collections of readings, Lifting Our Voices and Sources of Our Faith. It opens with this statement from the Leadership Council of the Unitarian Universalist Association of Congregations, October 2008. With humility and courage born of our history, we are called as Unitarian Universalists to build the beloved community where all souls are welcome as blessings, and the human family lives whole and reconciled. One of the great strengths of Unitarian Universalism, embodied in our 6 sources, is our belief that spiritual wisdom speaks in many voices. This understanding is the key to welcoming all souls into our faith communities as blessings. Each new person we encounter has something to teach us. Values such as love, peace, compassion, and justice are expressed in every culture and tradition all over the world, in beautifully and powerfully different ways. Taken together, these expressions illuminate the various facets of these ideas, giving them nuance and depth, but only if we allow them to. Looking for commonalities is the relatively easy part of forming a multicultural community. True multiculturalism, however, means being humble and brave enough to explore our different perspectives, experiences, traditions, and values while staying in relationship. It means bringing our whole selves to the table and inviting others to do the same. Not just the parts that fit in, it means being willing to be changed. None of us feels welcomed as a blessing if we are asked to leave part of ourselves behind, if we are constantly asked to translate our beliefs, perspectives, and spiritual questions into the language and frame of reference of the majority. We do not feel that we are recognized for the gifts we have to offer if our interactions and relationships leave no room for mutual transformation. Learning from and about each other helps us practice true hospitality. When we share our cultural traditions and one another in worship, we can offer this welcoming message. We value your rich traditions and worldview so much that we are committed to learning about it. Often readings carry cultural resonance and meanings that extend beyond the words alone. When you use readings in worship, in religious education, and small group ministries, consider it part of your standard preparation to research some of their content. Learn and share as much as you can about the authors or speakers, their stories, their cultural and historical contents, and the significance attached to what they've said or written. If you use the internet for your research, pay particular attention to websites and online books developed or published by cultural organizations and academic institutions. Personal websites are not reliable. Unitarian Universalists are a people engaged in the perpetual search for truth and meaning. What any one of us knows and has experienced is only one piece of the truth. Let us open ourselves to what we can learn from each other, as well as from those we have yet to meet.
It is so good to have Brian back in the room. Amen. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Rita. And that song, Don't Get Around Much Anymore, I had the idea while Brian was playing that. I don't remember the lyrics to the actual song, but I was thinking that that's perfect for this theme of practicing our sources. If we don't get around much and don't explore much, we kind of get stuck. So my exploring has taken me in a lot of places. I take seriously this concept of the principle that we have of a responsible, and I would add respectful, search for truth and meaning, and that it ties directly to our sources, our wisdom sources of this living tradition, where we go to do that search. So today I want to talk about sort of the overall concept of respectful and responsible search for truth and meaning as we access these sources. My first real gut-wrenching exposure to the concept of what you've probably heard the phrase cultural appropriation. Maybe you've heard the phrase cultural misappropriation. There's been great debate whether the mis is even important in front of that word. If you've appropriated it, you've appropriated it, whether it was it's not good either way. And for many years, I was going to youth conferences where there were continental conferences where there was a program on teaching about social justice, and they would teach about cultural appropriation. And they would use a movie called White Shamans, Plastic Medicine Men. There was a lot of good stuff in this movie, and it is an award-winning movie. And it was also very much on the spectrum of either or. Either you are a Native person and you have a right to use these rituals, this dress, these sacred items, this language, all of that, or you're not, and therefore you don't. There was no room for ambiguity or paradox. Next month's theme. It was all either or. And then the very last youth continental program I went to, they didn't show that movie, the people who led it. Instead, and when they got to the part about, is this cultural appropriation or is it respectful borrowing or respectful sharing, they didn't do it as either or. They did it on a continuum, which seems so much healthier, especially as all my research talks about motives and impact and history and connection and all these things that add to that question of, can I use this? So much depends on how you want to use it. Some of it depends on relationship. Our country has a very complicated history around, especially indigenous peoples and African people who came from Africa and were captured and kidnapped and enslaved here. We have a complicated history. People who even came over later. My beloved is all Italian, and his grandparents came over here from Italy, and they did what most people did then. They assimilated. Like their children let go of the language. They still ate a lot of pasta, but that's kind of stereotyping, I think, But they blended into the mixing bowl, the soup pot that doesn't allow for any individualism. Everybody has to be the same. They abandoned their culture. Now, the people who were here when the colonists first arrived, they weren't asked about sharing so much. There were probably some isolated incidents where some good interaction and relationship was built up. But as a whole, the development of our country was very focused on the genocide of the culture of Native people here, of the First Nations. We built boarding schools. They will find bodies here as well, I am sure, if they haven't already. Just like in Canada, we're hearing terrible news from Canada about the bodies that are being found from the boarding schools from years ago. They were relocated against their will, told to give up their land, falsely, sometimes told you can keep your land, and then still driven out. These are all forms of genocide, all forms of taking away a people's language, their rituals, their communities, how they live together. And borrowing and sharing and adapting cultural practices has been a part of human history since we started moving around, since people started migrating. Migrating is a human condition. We migrate all the time. We're like many other creatures, like butterflies and hummingbirds, we migrate. And so it's not uncommon that people who were walking hundreds, maybe thousands of miles to get to the Hajj would come across different communities. Back in the middle of the 7th century, they would be encountering people in many different places, and they'd share with one another recipes and practices. And this is why you'll find maybe that some Indian spices taste a lot like Mexican spices, because these things, or Spanish spices really, it's more accurate, because these things got shared. I think about the Jewish exodus from Egypt and what they took with them from Egypt back to Israel. Once sea travel started and people could go all over the world, they were learning a lot. And there was commerce. The Silk Road is a very famous source of commerce and cultural exchange. Much of that was fine. But our nation was built on the backs of free labor, where King Cotton was the source of great wealth in this country. And my ancestors probably had nothing to do with that, although I have one that I'm still kind of not sure about. The first one who came here may have been a part of that. And So we are the descendants of those who created these circumstances with enslaved people and with the incredibly poor relationship with First Nations that persists today. And just like my ancestors handed this down and I inherited it, even though I didn't create it, I have a responsibility to work to make things better. I don't think anyone in this room created the situation we have in this country right now with racism and so much more. Our descendants will get to inherit the mess that we've made, primarily global warming and all the effects of that. So we always are dealing with what we've inherited from those before us in trying to work towards the beloved community where all are treated fairly and justly and all are fed and all have water and all have everything they need to thrive. And that's our goal, our vision, to create places where people can be fully themselves. That's our goal and vision here. Our goal of our vision of radical welcome, I think, could best be described as creating a multicultural, religiously pluralist community. So that everyone's culture is welcome, and they're welcome to share it as they are willing. They're also welcome to tell me if I've misused something from their culture. Religious pluralism allows us to coexist with tremendous differences in ideas about the divine or not divine, about how our beliefs and our practices and all of this, we have so much freedom in that. But it's important to do that in an educated manner. There are so many Unitarian Universalist sources I can draw from that I don't have to go too far afield to look for other sources for my search for truth and meaning. Though I admit that I've been diving pretty deep into Shambhala Buddhism in the last few years, and it's really feeding something very deep in my soul. I'm being taught by someone who was taught by the person who originally brought it here from Tibet and started this form of Buddhism it was in Tibet originally, but brought it to the United States to teach people here because they wanted people here to know about this. It's an important practice towards our vision of beloved community. When I'm looking at what can I use in worship or in other settings that are public, I search for reliable sources to learn about them. My research this time took me, I admit I did not go real far in my search, so I'm sure there are other sources that are probably more reliable than Wikipedia. But they did have a long list of sources at that bottom of the article, so I can go back and look. And that's how I learned that the dream catcher came out of the Ojibwe nation, that it was a symbol of protection. And they didn't call it dream catcher. It comes out of the story of Spider Woman, who connected all the people of the tribe. And as the tribe was growing larger and larger and migrating further and further, the women in the community wanted something that would help Spider Woman to cast her web as wide as we were going. So every time a child was born, they would weave this form of this protection omen for them. I'm sorry, it's not a omen, it's a charm, a protective charm is what it was called in the article. So it's really not appropriate to buy these from non-native people. It's not appropriate to make our own necessarily if we're going to sell them. It's probably okay to have one in your house, especially if it was a gift, especially if it's a gift from a native person or you bought it from native people. But it's probably not something that you want to start your small business around, because that would be appropriating something from the Ojibwe tradition without their permission. Now, if you develop relationship with Ojibwe peoples and and learn from them how to make these and want to be a part of helping to share their story, and they teach you how to do that responsibly and respectfully, great. On the other hand, our Tibetan singing bowl is not really from Tibet. From Tibet. It was developed in China, is somewhere between the 11th and 19th century before the Common Era, so it's very ancient. Not the singing bowl as such, but the idea of a metal bowl as a musical instrument. And that's what it was designed as, a musical instrument. So it has continued. It didn't become a singing bowl probably until the 50s when they found that some of them were designed such that you could get that singing sound out of them. And somehow in the 70s it got attributed to Tibet. And I learned this first from a Tibetan musician when we went to a concert of his, and he was talking about all the instruments he had, and he was giving us the history of the instruments, and he kind of made fun of the idea that the singing bowl has been attributed to the Tibetan culture. They are making them in Tibet now, but that's not where it originated from. So just interesting things to learn about the kinds of things that we assume are correct because it's just been handed down to us. So when we're looking at using things, we have to talk about, how do I benefit? How does this take away from another community? What is our relationship with that community? There's a phrase I learned in the Meadville Lombard's Beloved Conversations program I just completed that's called moving at the speed of trust. And I love this phrase, and my discussion group spent a lot of time with it because it takes time to build the relationship, to learn something new, to learn someone new who's in a different culture, who has a different worldview or a different life experience or different cultural references. You want to build relationship with them before you go up and say, hey, tell me about, you look like you're probably from India. Can you tell me about such and such? You're not in a relationship with the person. Why would they want to trust you with their deepest experience of their identity? So I want to close this with those words from Gordon McKeeman, about how we approach the mystery and how we approach our practices, not just the stuff we take in to develop our ideas of truth and meaning, but also the spiritual practices that we engage with in order to increase our sense of values and courage and our spirit, to approach the mystery with caution, to not be too certain, to come to the edge of uncertainty, to question what we think we already know, and wonder if there's something we don't know that we don't know. To approach it with reverence, that whatever we're engaging with came from someone, unless you have created it purely yourself from the clay of the earth, and even then you've taken it from the earth. Everything is interdependent. We are getting something from others always. So reverence for that, awe at all that is available to us, hope, active hope, being in relationship, being in a way in the world that we can engage with the mystery as a source of inspiration for creating a more just world. Quiet. Sometimes the mystery just needs us to be quiet and listen, within, around. And presence. Just show up, be fully present to one another, listen before talking, listen to understand before being understood. Just listen and be present. Bring your own spiritual truth, created out of a responsible search for that truth and meaning in your lives. Blessed be. For our pastoral prayer this morning, I offer two prayers based on the writings of Irina Klepfers, a self-described Jew, a survivor of the Holocaust, a lesbian, a poet, a teacher, and an activist. Her poems and essays reflect her commitment to socialist secular Judaism and to the challenge of living Jewishly as a lesbian feminist. Before I begin, I want us to have in mind and in our hearts all the people there in Miami where the condominium collapsed, people who are still waiting to hear news about their loved ones, still hoping beyond hope that they will emerge. Hold in our hearts those people in the Northwest who have just tremendous suffering from the heat dome this week, the over 300 people who died in that heat. Hold in your hearts and prayers those people who lost their lives decades ago and have only now been found. And for all their descendants who have wondered and suffered, we hold them in our hearts. Here is the prayer. These words are dedicated to those who died because they had no love and felt alone in the world, because they were afraid to be alone and tried to stick it out, because they could not ask, because they were shunned, because they were sick and their bodies could not resist the disease, because they played it safe, because they had no connections, because they had no faith, because they felt they did not belong and wanted to die. These words are dedicated to those who died because they were loners and liked it, because they acquired friends and drew others to them, because they took risks, because they were stubborn and refused to give up, because they asked for too much. These words are dedicated to those who died because a card was lost and a number was skipped, because a bed was denied, because a place was filled and no other place was left. These words are dedicated to those who died because someone did not follow through, because someone was overworked and forgot, because someone left everything to God, because someone was late, because someone did not arrive at all, because someone told them to wait and they just couldn't any longer. These words are dedicated to those who died because death is a punishment, because death is a reward, because death is a final rest, because death is eternal rage. These words are dedicated to those who died. Bashert. Inevitable. These words are dedicated to those who survived because their second grade teacher gave them books, because they did not draw attention to themselves and got lost in the shuffle, because they knew someone who knew someone else who could help them and bumped into them on a corner on a Thursday afternoon, because they played it safe, because they were lucky. These words are dedicated to those who survived because they knew how to cut corners, because they drew attention to themselves and always got picked, because they took risks, because they had no principles and were hard. These words are dedicated to those who survived because they refused to give up and defied statistics, because they had faith and trusted in God, because they expected the worst and were always prepared, because they were angry, because they could ask, because they mooched off others and saved their strength, because they endured humiliation, because they turned the other cheek, because they looked the other way. These words are dedicated to those who survived because life is wilderness and they were savage, because life is an awakening and they were alert, because life is a flowering and they blossomed, because life is a struggle and they were free to accept it. These words are dedicated to those who survived. Bashert. Inevitable. Now let us sing together Spirit of Life and Fuente de Amor, written by Carolyn McDade, translated in Spanish by Reverend Lilia Cuervo. And please rise and body your spirit as we blend our voices as one. Our congregation is committed to creating a more compassionate world. To this end, each quarter we split our plate collection with an organization nominated by people in the congregation and selected by the Give Away the Plate committee. Today we begin our third quarter with a new recipient, Special Needs, KNEADS, Special Needs and Treats, a Gwinnett-based organization. This remarkable nonprofit organization, which on the outside looks like many other bakeries, provides job training and employment to special needs adults. They bake cakes, cookies, and other sweet treats, and by doing so, they develop social skills and competence. The organization sells to the public, but it also provides baked goods to homeless shelters, food pantries, foster care systems, and other support groups. It also gives free birthday cakes to individuals with special needs in Gwinnett County. I take this one to heart because prior to coming here, I worked with adults with special needs, and it was a very rewarding ministry, and I'm so glad that, and this was exactly the kind of thing that we did, was help them to develop their skills to be independent in the world. Our plate contributions also support the shared ministry of this congregation, so I ask that you please give generously to support the work of this important ministry in our wider community, as well as the vision and mission of our congregation. As we listen to our pianist Brian Bishop play the music for our offertory, I want to tell you that the music playing is Materna, written by Samuel A. Ward. It's been used for at least over 1,200 different hymns over in many different fashions. We will know it most as the hymn America the Beautiful. You will see ways on the screen as you hear the music, ways to contribute to our offering via PayPal, Venmo, or by mailing a check payable to UUCG to the address shown. If you are worshiping with us for the first time, your presence is a great gift to this congregation, and you may choose to let the plate pass. The offering will now be most gratefully received. May the generous gifts received this week move us towards realizing our vision of a more connected and compassionate world. I want to offer a little gratitude this morning to the people who came out last Saturday and made significant progress on the new retaining wall for our garden. Harry Felice, Don Graff, Dylan Peters, Larry Long, Nick Graff. And from the pictures I saw, I think Steve and Karen Smith may have had something to do with it as well. Also want to thank Larry Long for being our collector for the food drive today and for delivering those to the Lawrenceville Cooperative Ministries this week. Very grateful to Rita Romero for offering her voice for our reading this morning, and so glad to have Brian back in the room with us. This will be a regular thing now, and in a little over a month you'll get to be here with all of us too. Also grateful to our tech team. Gabby Maduro Salvari served as our Zoom manager today, and Russ Taddeo managed our video and sound. Actually, they're both still doing it, so I should say that in the present test. And Doug Beers is here. He's been helping us with the camera setup and AV setup, and I'm so grateful to you, Doug, for all that you're doing to support us in making this transition to a multi-platform service. And now I want to encourage you to seek ways to connect between Sundays. If you are new to our congregation, you can receive information about our upcoming events and activities by signing up for our weekly e-news. There'll be a slide here in a moment with instructions for that. Are we having that thing again where the slide's moving on your side but not on my side, and maybe for some people in the room but not everybody in the room? Okay, I'll try to spell it out more carefully then. So write an email to info@uucg.org to sign up for our weekly e-news that comes out on Thursdays at 5 o'clock, and to sign up for our newsletter that comes out every month. And you may also get special announcements. Those are very rare, maybe a few times a year. If you want to know more about what's happening, look on our website on the calendar, and there's also a place there to register for events. If you're looking for a way to be of service, this is where those slides would be really helpful. There are many projects at the church to complete before we reconvene, and really what's on that slide is information about next weekend. I am going to be here all day Saturday and Sunday, and the doors will be open for you to come out and do the inside projects you signed up for this week. I will send out emails to those who signed up and connect you with other people who need to be involved, and we'll get that organized this week, so look for that. And if you didn't sign up for something but you have time on Saturday or Sunday to come out, please do. It's also going to be another work day. Yes, what?
Yes, Reverend.
Yes.
What slide do you want to be on?
I would like to go, I'm the one who's supposed to be doing it. It's working now. It maybe was working all the time, but it was me.
No.
I'm so used to you doing it. Okay. So sorry, everyone. We're real people here, and it's all about connection, not perfection. So July 10th, the building will be open from 10 to 5, but Harry Fleet's is going to be here at 8 a.m. to welcome anyone who wants to continue working on the retaining wall and do other projects on the property. And the building will be open again from 1 to 5 on Sunday, and just come on out and help. Okay. It's getting real, folks. We got to get this place ready. And part of that is learning more about what you would like to see when we come back. What kinds of things were important to you before that maybe aren't so important now? What have you found to be more important? What would we like to create together? What needs to be revisioned or revitalized? So come out. There's a survey, and there's a short link there, bit.ly link, but also a scan code. This is also in the newsletter that just came out last Friday. And so there's lots of ways that you can connect to this survey. It's on the Facebook group. And this week, I'll ask that we send out a special email just with this information, because we really want to get a lot of responses to the survey. It also asks questions about your comfort level with returning, especially if we are not having a vaccination test to come in. We will be welcoming people and not asking what their vaccination status is. So that's why we're asking everyone to wear masks when we're all here together. So please fill out the survey and so that we can know kind of what is going on in people's worlds around this. Today is our food collection. As I mentioned earlier, from 2 to 4, Larry will be here to collect your contributions to the Lawrenceville Cooperative Ministry. And Corley Elementary does not need backpacks from us this year. They got a very generous contribution of backpacks through a special program that was distributing them to many of the schools. What they do need are clothes for the children. So they definitely need new underwear, and they need new or gently used shirts, pants, shorts, those kinds of things. So please, you can purchase, you can call if you have young kids who are growing up and outgrowing their clothes and they're gently used, you can donate those. There's a bin outside the front of the building. Bring them there and we'll bring them inside and collect them here until we get enough to deliver. And we still need platelets. There's still a platelet shortage, so please do that if you are able. I have not been able to give recently because of the tendonitis in my arm. This is the only arm they can stick, and it's really painful. So somebody's got to step in and take my spot because I was giving pretty regularly before. And we have religious exploration programs for our children over the summer. We'll have in-person gatherings on Saturday, the 10th, next Saturday. It's going to be a real party here next Saturday. And the 24th, bring your own lunch. And that's for all families. Whether you have children or not, it's for everyone. You could come and participate in that. Their Zoom gatherings will continue on the 18th and the 25th, and August will be a time off to prepare for our next program year. And then Christiana is busily working on developing the materials and things for your personal search for truth and meaning in the document that she every month for. And that's not what that slide is, but that slide's for the 10 a.m. Faith Development Program. So come to that. That's on Zoom still. It will still be on Zoom for a while. We'll probably start it up on the 15th with other things, but we'll check in on that. And here is the sources for your search for truth and meaning. So Christiana's getting that up, and that link is also in our e-news every week, and you can find a lot of good stuff there. Book group is meeting July 28th. The book is We Came, We Saw, We Left. So check that out. You've got plenty of time. It's the beginning of July, so plenty of time to get that read before the book group. And even if you haven't read it, come to the book group. It'll be on Zoom, very accessible. Yoga with Jen will start in person here in the sanctuary on July 20th. This is a new thing that she's offering to the members and friends of UUCG. So it's for us. There'll be a couple of people from her group that were here before. It's from 4 to 5 p.m. My understanding is she is not charging a fee. This is something she wants to give to this community, this practice that she has served her so well. And then we're going to start splitting up these things that are happening weekly. So in person on the 12th, we have the Gwinnett Understanding Secular Truths. Every Tuesday, starting this Tuesday, is choir practice at 7, choir practice with masks on. And it'll be exciting to see how that goes. And this Friday, Sharon and Candace will be hosting the Women's Spirituality group here in person, so please come. They're actually to meet outside, but they have a rain plan for meeting in here. Still on Zoom is our Yarns from the Heart group on first and third Wednesdays, our Belief Explorations on second Sundays, and Exploring Tarot with Sherry is every Sunday at 5 o'clock, but not today. It's a holiday. She's taken a day off, and she deserves it. She's been holding this space so well for us. Thank you. And our pastoral care team is available for you 24/7. You just need to talk to somebody having some emotional or spiritual questions or challenges, and you want to talk. They're there to listen. Very well trained. And now please rise in spirit as we say together the words we say as we extinguish our chalice, followed by our closing song, We Are Building a New Way by Martha Sandifer. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again very soon. That means I probably sang. Everybody probably heard me singing. Our closing words come from Barnaby Fetter. Spirit of life, may our fumbling tongues be blessed so that chatter becomes prayer and prayer becomes concerted action. May our restless minds be blessed so that insight becomes will and will becomes effective action. May our anxious hearts be blessed so that longing becomes love and love guides our every action. Our service has ended, and now our service to one another and our wider communities begins. Be very well, beloveds. See some of you when you're dropping off food today. See some of you next weekend. See you on Zoom next Sunday morning. Love you all. Now you may stay online with us for a time of connection. We'll break into breakout groups. 6 households per group, 15 minutes to introduce yourselves, enjoy some time connecting with others, and just having a little chat. And I'll join you at the end. Be well.